is very good.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast with me, Jack Hope, Max Rowe Brown. How are you doing, Max?
I am good. Thank you, Jack. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. And birthday boy, Ross Legg.
I am wonderful. That was a very suggestive way of saying Ross Legg there.
Happy birthday, Ross.
Yeah, Ross Legg. No, I'm very good, thanks. Yeah, as you say, my birthday. Test cricket is alive and well, and England have won. So I'm in a fantastic mood today.
Good stuff. This week on the Cricket Podcast, we've got another two-part show. So mirroring what we did last week, in part one, we will be talking Australia versus India. India, I think it's fair to say, shocked the world last night as they overcame Australia in Australia with a heavily depleted side to win the Border-Gavaskar Trophy 2-1. We'll be asking, how the fuck did they do that?
That is literally the first question I've got written down.
Then, in part two, it's England time. Joe Root and the boys, they went over to Sri Lanka and they pulled off a win in the first test. We'll be talking about that and then having a little look forwards to the second test over there. But first, fellas, it's our tangential question of the week. Ross, as it is your birthday today, I've been inspired to ask a kind of birthday-themed question. So in that spirit, my question is, if you were planning a cricket-themed party, which cricketer would you get to organise it, and which cricketer would you ask to be the after-dinner speaker? Ross, why don't you let us know who's up to the plate for you?
I think I'd have Dwayne Bravo. He would organise it. I think being a DJ, the music's going to be on point. The people who attend are going to be great, and then the after-dinner speaker. We've had him on the show before. He was great on here, great on Sky all the time when he was on there. David Gower is my after-dinner speaker.
I'm so glad I didn't go with Gower now.
Yeah, me too. Hey, he's up there, isn't he? He is up there. We have to acknowledge he would be a great after-dinner speaker.
Yeah.
Max, same question for you. Who is organising your birthday party and who is the after-dinner speaker?
Well, I've gone for a slightly different route, although I must say what Ross's suggestion is a very good one. I have gone with Imran Khan because he has the resources of an entire nation behind him with which to organise this party. We could be in some pretty grandiose settings, I think, with a lot of people on hand to make it a memorable night. So that's who I've gone to organise it. And as an after-dinner speaker, I think I've gone for possibly the greatest character in the history of cricket, and that is Sri Lanka, who's done basically everything, so he will not be short of content, and he's a veritable star, isn't he? So
That's
he can reel off stories of cricket, match fixing, TV, film, politics. He even went into politics. It's a storied career.
Yeah, I also
He's
like
back playing now.
Yeah,
He's back. Sri Lanka is playing in like the Indian, not IPL, whatever the one below that is.
I also like Max's Pakistan-Indian kind of mix-up there as well, which is great, because you could lock down the whole of Lahore, have a street party, and then have Sri Lanka on a stage at the end of it. I think that'd be a great thing to see.
Yeah, well, they always say sport is a good word, sporting diplomacy, isn't it? So we'll get a Nobel Peace Prize and a really good party.
It probably does mean your birthday party would be in Pakistan. Do you reckon that would affect attendance?
Well, I think we can maybe think about paying for some flights for people to get them over there, bust them in.
It's going to be like kind of that Neymar style birthday party where it goes on for 3 or 4 days. Otherwise, you can't really justify people.
Oh yeah, it's very much a festival.
I didn't go for a cricketer to organise my birthday party. I went for Kerry Packer, so the guy who organised World Series cricket back in the 70s, I think. He transformed the game. Basically, what I always think with birthdays, they never really live up to the potential. And I think that whether you're attending them, whether it's your own or whatever, but there is always that potential. And what you want is someone who has the vision to realise that and to build upon what's a solid concept, just like cricket, and transform it. And that's what Kerry Packer did, isn't it? He saw the potential, he executed the plan. Other good things about Kerry Packer, dress codes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd have good outfits.
Really,
you're kind of pitching him as almost like the Great Gatsby.
Yeah, kind of, obviously. I mean, he is, in a way, the Great Gatsby of cricket. He'd innovate around. I don't really know what that means. Innovation around birthday. But,
Yeah, well,
but he did that in cricket.
I was going to ask Jack, what sort of things do you think Kerry Packer could bring to the traditional birthday party that have yet to be implemented?
TV rights. He monetised cricket, didn't he? Really well. So he'd probably make the birthday quite a lucrative occasion.
Microtransactions, maybe.
Yeah. And look, I'm not Kerry Packer. That's why I need Kerry Packer to help me organise my birthday. So I can't.
It's becoming crystal clear that you'd organise a terrible birthday party. You need help. That's what you need.
And then after dinner speaker, very topical. I want 30 minutes of Ravi Ashwin's best stuff. Just dress him up like Jerry Seinfeld and let him go. That's what I reckon.
Nice. I think that's a great choice. When you originally posted this question earlier, Jack, I thought you were going to ask about a dinner party, a house party, and kind of something a bit extra. And Max, when you started to go down that route, what would you do for a very British kind of in a village hall person? Who would be that person? I've got Graham Swan down for that.
To organise or to speak?
Just that evening. So you're not going to have the one person who organises it probably has to be the dinner speaker. I reckon Graham Swan. Not only has got the music, he's probably got some good stories. He's not very good at music, let's be fair, but must be pretty good.
He does lots of impressions, and that I think would be popular at.
I think.
Parochial.
I think what you want is probably someone who's got a lot of time on their hands, but also knows a lot of people. But I wouldn't venture as to say who that would be.
Yeah, we'll let the listeners ponder that one. And on the topic of our listeners, Ross, do we have any messages for them?
Yes, they should follow us on Spotify or any podcast platform they listen to us on. Leave us a review on Apple. We will read them out if we get them. I think we've got some more coming in as we speak. That's what I'm going to say. And then also,
live reviews.
Live reviews, especially on my birthday. And they should follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Cricket Pod.
And also, wish Ross a happy birthday.
Yeah. Get in touch. Look, wish Ross a happy birthday. And the number one thing that you can do to support the podcast is to tell a friend. Let somebody know with your voice, in person if you're allowed to do it, but over the telephone. Maybe on WhatsApp, record a voice message and say, hey, this is really good podcast. They did an excellent episode wrapping up the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. We haven't recorded it yet. We're not 100% sure it will. But I'm fairly sure it will be an excellent episode. There's lots of stuff to talk about. You don't have to record all of this. Like, paraphrase.
No, I think you need to say it verbatim, and if you do a great job, we'll organise you a party.
Yeah. And then, just tell a friend. That's the key message. Mm-hmm. Right, we're going to take a short break. Should we play the new jingle?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. Can we get it out a number of times today?
New jingle coming up now, and then we will be back with Australia v India.
I can't wait to get you to the Gabba, Ash. I'll tell you what. I can't wait to get you to the Gabba, Ash. I'll tell you what.
It's full, it's down the ground, it'll be at least one. Saini, he's got an injury with the groin. It goes as far as the fence. India, incredible. Rishabh Pant is the star. India win the test.
Yes, much like Tim Payne, I myself can't wait to get to the Gabba to talk to you and with you about, well, really what is one of the great test matches to round off what's been a pretty fantastic test series. So let's set the scene. Shortly after the heroics of Sydney defying the odds to draw a game in the face of yet more injuries and some typically hostile Australian banter, India headed to Brisbane and the Gabba, where Australia had not lost since 1988. Fair to say, also, things got off to a pretty rough start, having already lost Jadeja to his dislocated/broken thumb, which now requires surgery in the previous game. Ashwin then ruled out with back spasms before the game, and the spearhead of India's attack, Jasprit Bumrah, the last man standing from India's first choice seam lineup, pulled out with an abdominal strain. That's India left with a pace attack comprising players who'd made their debuts in this series. And on top of that, to balance out the weakened lower order of the batting, in the absence of Jadeja and Ashwin, Washington Sundar was drafted in, who was literally there to make up the numbers.
So he's a net bowler. He was there to bowl in the nets.
You can't make this up. So that's not great going into the game. Australia won the toss as well, which probably not ideal in the circumstances. And then one of the new boys, Navdeep Saini, pulled up with a groin strain after about 7 overs on the first morning. So it looked, for all the world, like the writing was on the wall, especially after Labuschagne notched up another ton and Australia got themselves to 311 for 5 on in their first innings. But it's been a topsy-turvy series, and obviously we weren't done yet. Cue a mini collapse by Australia and a mini fight back, and then India in their innings looked in trouble before the new boys Thacker and Sundar kept the Aussies at bay and kept the deficit down to 33. Australia batted again because that's what happens in Test cricket, and then some players hit some runs, and then there was a bit of rain, and then we got to day 5 where India needed just to see the day out to retain the Border-Gavaskar Trophy or chase 328 to win it outright, and the rest, as they say, is history. As we know, they won. It was
you've given it
the most
you've given it away.
The most unbelievable fifth day from India, given the situation they were in. And as Jack rightly said at the start of the show, there's one question that we have to answer to start with, I think. How in hell did they do that?
Well, I've got a bit of a thought here, Max. Did India just rest their players because they knew they were going to win this game? Did they just completely just like, we've got the wood over Australia here? We can play our C team and still trounce this Australian lineup. Was that the arrogant? Was that the ploy from these guys here?
No,
well, maybe with the England series on the horizon, it was not a bad shout, is it? Keep your players fresh for the one that matters.
I think actually, if you to understand how this happened, you have to understand how we got here, and how we got here is that everybody in the India team got injured, and so I think the first piece of blame that needs to be apportioned, and I think this is good blame because it does lead to a better story. So. Maybe it's not blame, maybe it's thanks. The India medical team, or whoever's the physio or organising the fitness
coaches.
There's some serious questions need to be asked there, aren't there? They've lost basically an entire 11, and about 9 of them.
Quite a good one as well.
Yeah, have been to muscle injuries or general fitness things. How they actually won that 5th test is a completely different question. I mean, there was a stat floating around, and I haven't got it directly to hand, but it was something along the lines of the India bowling unit had a total of 5 caps, I think, between them prior to
4.
this test, and had taken 10 wickets cumulatively going into this versus an Australian one which had something like 1,000. I don't know if it was quite 1,000, but I mean, Lyons got basically 400 alone. Cummins has got 150. Hazelwood must have 100 or so. A bunch of wickets.
A bunch more.
And but they didn't bowl like that, I think is the crucial thing. And I mean, if we want to summarise why India were able to get out of this match or how India got out of this match with a win, and how they actually took down the series as a whole, I think there are the 2 key factors I would point to, with maybe a smaller third. One, that Australia consistently did not bat well enough, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about where they went wrong in this match, I think, and I'm sure you two have got some points and thoughts. And India consistently bowled really well. I think
no matter who they picked.
Yeah. Well, no. England fans know well enough that when you go to Australia, you've got to be racking up 450s, 500s. And Australia didn't manage 1 400 across all 8 innings. And that, again, as England fans know very well, means you are vulnerable in Australia. Because when those pitches flatten out a little bit, or when you get a day where the ball's not moving around, which basically happened, or happened 2 or 3 times across the series, you get punished by quality players, and the third point probably being that India were able to punish Australia at the right time. There's a little bit of luck involved in that. I mean, Pant was dropped twice at the SCG. There was a big stumping opportunity missed by Tim Payne in the test at the Gabba
I think
last
I'll
night.
let him off that one. That one did a bit out the rough.
Sure, but maybe a really good keeper takes that. It's a little bit of luck there, isn't it? Pujara was absolutely hammered by 11 short balls or something like that.
Yeah,
and,
10 or 11 times he got hit.
And none of them went up in the air or anything like that. So a little bit of luck, but a lot of determination.
Hardly any of them hit the bat.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been out. It just got hit in the face.
They ultimately India when they had the opportunity to punished Australia.
Well, anything to add to that, Ross?
Well, I think it's interesting kind of say about the kind of punishing Australia. I think they played tactically perfectly in this game. There was clearly a plan to. I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but actually play Test cricket to make them bowl for as long as possible and actually eat up the deliveries. If you look at what the Indian batsmen did, they faced I think on average over 60 balls apiece in the top order, and actually you got Pujara, the ball eater himself, on the wall, as you said, standing firm. Rahane was there. Pant even faced loads of deliveries. And I think that drives them into the ground, puts extra pressure on Nathan Lyon, who wasn't having his best series as well, and I think that really does take his toll.
Do you want the other? I mean, there's another tactical point there, Ross, and I think it ties in quite nicely with Pujara's ball eating abilities.
The hungry hippo that is Pujara.
56 off of 211 balls. I mean,
well, it was worse than that at one point. It was only when he realised, we might win this, that he put his foot down. He was on 11 off 100 balls.
It was amazing.
I think it was the 10th slowest or 10th lowest number of runs anyone who'd faced 100 balls had ever achieved in the history, 140 odd year history of Test cricket. But at the other end, Shubman Gill was batting like he thought he could win the game, and the partnerships India built the whole way through the day. Whoever wasn't Pujara was looking to score runs, and that meant that they always had a little bit of a chance. I think going into the last session, they needed 140 to win. It was going to be a long one. There might have been some rain, but that gave them a little bit of a sniff, and a bit like a one-day international. It's like a one-day international that you can draw basically for India at that point. They were in the driving seat, and they could chip away slowly, and it got down. I can't remember the exact equation, but it got down to
it was 69 off of 15 overs at the end.
Yeah. A reasonably achievable score on a pitch that wasn't doing loads with guys who could bat a bit. I mean, we criticised India's tail on a previous podcast, but they mixed things up a little bit here. They had a little bit more batting, and they had Pant in. And while Pant was in, Australia were always likely to lose, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it's sort of the classic theory of taking it deep, wasn't it? Like take it deep, always give yourself a chance, and at the same time, I think they struck the perfect balance really by having that. We're giving ourselves a chance, but at the same time, we can just shut up shop if we need to, and that's sort of what we actually saw at the SCG. We were getting to a situation there where it was like they could actually win this. This is insane, and then after a while, it was like, okay, let's close the doors on this one.
It was a test match sort of won in the image of Dhoni, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Like the keeping India in the game, or CSK more recently in the game, is very much a Dhoni move to give yourself a chance. You can't win the game if Pant's out. You can't win the game if Pujara doesn't face 200 balls. Like it's not an option if Pujara. So much earlier in the innings, there was a really close LBW on Pujara. There was a little bit of controversy around it because the umpire said he wasn't playing a shot, and he might have been playing a shot. I would err, having watched all of the third test, that he probably wasn't. He did do that a lot, kick the ball away with his bat behind his back. So I would say the umpire probably made a brave but good call there, and I totally accept that. That's open to interpretation.
To be honest, on that one, I think as an umpire, it's just, even if you think he's not playing a shot, it would be so difficult to give that one because of how far he's taken a little step forward and like getting that distance between the ball striking him and the wicket as large as possible. And at that point, as an umpire, you've got to be so sure to say that's out.
Yeah, sure.
And with the technology to rely on, I think they tend to be less likely to give it as well, because if it is going to hit the stumps, they've always got that option.
The thing I would say, though, is that once the call has been made that Pujara wasn't playing a shot, that should be out. Like the ICC's rule, where the top of the stumps begins, or ends, rather, is incorrect. It's where the bail rests in the stump.
Yeah.
And so, if the ball hits that, if the ball hits that portion of the stump, the bail comes off. It's not. It wasn't clipping. It wasn't half the ball trimming the bails.
It was smacking the top of it.
It was smacking the stumps. Yeah. So I think Australia are a little bit unlucky there. And if Pujara's out, they don't have the opportunity to win the game. Then everybody has to take on some of those balling responsibilities, and that's sort of what I mean by some elements of luck. But like the formula that won them this game and won the game at the MCG and kept them in the game in Sydney works. As Ross said, they really ground down the Australian bowlers. Nathan Lyons never looked worse. Mitchell Starc looked, I know Mitchell Starc had a little bit of an injury, but did not look threatening on the last day. Really did not look threatening in the whole series.
Only Patrick Cummings really did himself covered himself any glory with yesterday's performance.
Only the actual best bowler in the world was any good.
I mean, Hazelwood did take a fifer in the first innings, and he's a pretty good.
I was talking specifically about the last day, Ross.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think what we saw in England when Australia played in 2019 was they had a Pattinson. They had someone else who was just as good as one of the bowlers in there, and they had someone who could come in and out and they could rest a player. They need that, I think, in their lineup to keep it fresh and to keep them kind of going. And I think that was missing for Australia this time round.
You think they were suffering from a bit of fatigue by the end of the series?
I do think that. And I also think there was a bit of arrogance with the Australians, which kind of mutated in the use of the COVID kind of language that we see all the time at the moment into a bit of complacency. That soon went to panic, and then they started wondering about the weather, and then they were like, and by that time it was too late. India were in the game, and they were in the driving seat, as Jack said.
I think that's a really good point to make about the Australians. I was looking at how this all unfolded, and I just think there are two completely different mentalities around the sides leading into this game. And with India, there was this sort of a sense of togetherness, I suppose, brought on by the fact that everyone was injured and everyone had to basically just graft and work for each other. And I saw a stat that Andy Zaltzman posted on Twitter today, which was basically the point that no one in the India team made over 300 runs in the series and no one took over 15 wickets. I mean, that's partly because only two of them played all four tests, which was Pujara and Rahane. So it's a little bit of an arbitrary thing to say. But I think the wider point is that everyone mucked in, and it was like a real team performance. All 37 or whatever it was of the players that ended up playing for India put in a performance. And then you can contrast that with Australia coming into this last game. Tim Payne gave it all away with his little sledge. We can't wait to get you to the Gabba. Blah blah blah. We're gonna do you. I think they just thought all they had to do was turn up, especially without Bumrah in the team. No Kohli, a weakened lineup. I think it just looked like they thought they would just roll over and it would be another win for Australia at the Gabba, and they didn't reckon on someone standing up to them. They didn't like it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, particularly on the first point there, Max, in that it was a complete performance across the series from the India squad. If you look at sort of the last 20 years, maybe 30 years of Indian cricket, they have gone away from home and been good before, but it's usually been because somebody has stood vigil, if you like. Tendulkar or Dravid, Laxman did it to Australia. Even Kohli in England. I know they lost 3-1, but Kohli scored a boatload of runs in 2018. Last time they went to Australia, Pujara obviously, I don't think he seemed to be batting all the time. But in this series, that wasn't the case. Pretty much everybody stood up at one point. So whilst I kind of get that. Whilst I wouldn't read Andy Zaltzman's point as a negative point, and I don't think you have either.
No, not at all.
I had a list here of individual individual moments that are could be career highlights for these players, to be perfectly honest. Rahane's century in the second test after the 36 all out. Pant played 2 absolutely phenomenal 4th innings knocks. I think somehow I can't remember the exact phrasing of this, but I think in Tendulkar's entire career chasing 4th innings total, he made 4 half centuries. Pant's got 2 in a week. Pujara batting forever across 2 tests. But when they played, Bumrah and Ashwin were fantastic. The best spinner in the series, probably the best pace bowler in the series. I think Bumrah probably out-bowled Cummins.
I think the only person who rivals Bumrah and performances is probably Mohammad Siraj, to be honest.
Well, and then that's it. So Siraj has come in, and it's like you wouldn't believe that guy has only just come into Test cricket, and you would not believe he wasn't one of India's first choice pace bowlers. And then we've got Ravi Ashwin, and then we've got Shubman Gill. I mean, Shubman Gill looks like he's going to play 150 tests.
Some of those shots he played on that 5th day.
He looks like he's played 150 tests, for Christ's sake. I mean,
looks like he played 150 tests against Mitchell Starc alone. Absolutely took him to the cleaners.
So I think it just demonstrates the sort of depth and talent they have. I think as well, and I don't know if you two will agree with this. I think I might get some lashback on this.
That's what we like. Controversy.
The India C team narrative has been a little bit overdone.
I do. I actually agree with you on this bit. And why do you
we're
think
looking
that?
at? Well, we've got in their top 6 is basically just missing Kohli. I think.
Yeah.
So you've got Pujara, you've got Pant, you've got Gill, you've got Rahane, and you've got Sharma. That's pretty handy. I don't think there's much missing there. I also think Siraj is now probably.
I think he's in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that the rest of their bowling probably wasn't amazing, but they're not mugs. These guys are like A-list players for their IPL franchises.
Yeah, well, see, this is the thing. I mean, they know pressure, don't they? Like they've played in the IPL, which is.
And the other thing is, earlier in the series, they had Jadeja, Ashwin, and Bumrah, who are their leading bowlers. So yeah, I do get loads of injuries has been a problem, and living in COVID land, not being able to go swimming and stuff at their hotel, has made this tour particularly hard for the Indians. But let's not. I don't think we want to be going too far down the the Miracle on Ice in ice hockey. At the Olympics back in the day, the Winter Olympics back in the day, when no NHL players used to go to the Olympics. It would all be college kids. And the USSR back then, it's been like in the 80s, wouldn't it? The USSR would take that very seriously, and they would assert their dominance and be like, look, we're the best motherfucking ice hockey players in the world. And then one year, a bunch of college kids beat them. It wasn't that. We're not talking about this. We're talking about like A-list players, and we're talking about India, who have well, I mean, let's be honest, the best pool of players. They have a very good domestic system, and they've got the IPL.
Is that domestic system, I think, is really important. And I also think their international setups absolutely spot on. So their under-19s, their India A team play proper competitive cricket, and I think that they're led by Rahul Dravid, who is definitely someone to learn from. He's not someone just to go and ignore, is he? And I think you touched upon the IPL, and Max, you talked about the kind of the being in a pressure situation. I also think it's the no fear attitude. They went to every single one of these test matches thinking they could win it. It wasn't a case of them properly batting out for the draw. Even the one they drew, they went for the win where they could, until they were just like, oh, actually, look, this is probably a bit out of our reach. And I think Pant is the perfect embodiment of that. I mean, Jack, at the start of the series, you had your reservations about Pant, but now the guy is going to play and play and play because he is capable of those kind of innings.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the thing with Pant, and I don't want to make this about England, but we are all English. And that's what we do, isn't it? That's kind of an English thing. Make it about England. In the series, so India's next 9 tests are against England. And we're going to see a lot of Pant. I wouldn't be so worried about Rishabh Pant. I mean, he's going to play an innings or two, but he will always give you a chance. I think particularly in England, that chance is probably going to be going a first or second slip and being caught quite regularly. I think it's Shubman Gill who's the real revelation. I mean, I think this innings in on the 5th day to get that 91 and really set him up
Yeah, the best thing,
amazing.
the best thing Privy Shaw's ever done is be shit for India, isn't it?
It's harsh, but it is a bit true, isn't it?
Are there any other points? I mean, there's a bunch of other points. I mean, either of you two got anything you'd like to
you've
talk?
touched on a couple there that I wanted to bring up, which was a sort of a selection squad thing. And I mean, yeah, India's C team is completely disingenuous and very unfair on the bowlers that they brought in, and I think it just highlights how strong this India squad is at the moment, and how exciting it is in the future. You know, Umesh Yadav is 30, I think, 33. Sorry, Ishant Sharma's 32. So they're sort of reaching the end of their careers. And
Mohammed Shami's in his late 20s.
Shami's 30. Yeah, Shami's 30. So
he looks like he's 45 as well.
Yeah, he is surprisingly 30. So I mean, with those three sort of experienced, you put them in the experienced category. And Siraj looking excellent in this series, and the other bowlers certainly doing themselves no harm. I think, aside from the fact it's very exciting, what would you do with India's selection if they were all fit? Who are you picking?
Well, I mean, Bumrah, Ashwin, Jadeja.
Yeah, they're the easy ones, Jack. Don't you're stalling.
For as far as I've seen, and I will admit I haven't watched every ball of Indian Test cricket over the last 5 years. I would take Mohammed Shami and I would take Siraj as the other two pacers. Yeah. I don't think you can not pick Siraj for a bunch of the next tests after the way he bowled.
Yeah. Well, he was their leading wicket taker in the series. Right. He played the same number of tests as Bumrah and took 2 more wickets. So that's not a bad audition, is it, for the team?
It isn't bad. No. I think just. I mean, you've got to envy, haven't you? The depth of talent there.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It's not India's C team, but I mean, for England, well, what's this rotation? Actually, I mean, England's bowling's not too bad, is it? It'd be like Chris Wokes and Sam Curran.
Maybe Ollie Stone, Saki Mahmood.
Yeah, they're not bad. I mean,
it's not terrible, is it? Yeah, an England C team versus India C team would be quite an exciting game, I think. Actually, I'd probably watch that. That'd be good. Get some cheap tickets.
Well, we've looked at India. What are your thoughts around kind of Australia throughout kind of the series? We kind of talked about their bowling a little bit, but there's some real questions to be asked around there. One, you've already talked about their batting, Jack, and how they're pretty much all fart and no poo, I think would be the best way to describe Australian batting at the moment. I think Matthew Wade's...
they're all poo, aren't they? That's the problem.
I think Matthew Wade's Test career is finally coming to an end.
Let's hope
he
so.
should be. He should be booted off the edge of the cliff.
Yeah, he's
got no place in Test cricket.
Yeah, Test average under 30 after about 30 matches. See you later, Matthew Wade. Cameron Green, Shane Watson 2.0. I think we're going to see a lot of him. I think he's going to be a good player.
I like Green. I think in the same way that I'm not like Pant doesn't terrify me as an England player in the same way that Gill does. Green doesn't terrify me either because he looks like a dreadful starter. Like he doesn't look like he looks like Bambi on ice until he's faced about 40 balls and then he looks very, very good.
Yeah. You don't often get that luxury in England, do you?
Well, yeah. So I mean, I'm sure he'll crush us in Australia a few times.
Yeah, big time.
But I think he might not be quite the finished article yet, is my judgment on Green.
I wouldn't expect so. He's quite young. He's a long way to go. But yeah, from what the Aussies say, he's a very, very exciting talent and worth looking at in the future. I think in terms of Australia, they've got a real problem up top. I mean, Warner came in, and I think he was rushed back out of panic.
He
could barely walk, so he didn't do much good. But even then, he'll have like that series against England where Broad just got him out every time. Like he does get stuck in a rut from time to time, and then like the other place is a real problem for them. I think you probably you want to go with Pukovsky because he looks he played the one innings he played he looked the part and he's clearly got skill and talent, but he's going to miss games, isn't he? Like he has this this issue with having been out with concussions a number of times, and whether he's going to be able to play every Test game will remains to be seen.
Well, I wonder
And then
what
you've got-
England's tactics will be when we got Jofra Archer
Jofra
against them.
Archer. And then you've got Joe Burns, who's
Joe Burns, I think, is probably done, isn't he?
not. Yeah, and then like they gave Marcus Harris another go. Like
I couldn't believe that.
I mean,
I think this is a problem with the organisation or structures probably of Australian cricket. To be honest, it didn't feel to me like they necessarily knew their best 11, and I think we have if we're going to give India like a few bonus points, we're going to say, well done India, despite some adversity doing this. You have to do the same for Australia, and the fact is their best opening batsman didn't play 2 tests and wasn't fit for the 2 that he did play. And Warner is a big differentiator in Australian conditions. So, I mean, if we look across the 4 tests, in the first couple, it was Matthew Wade and Joe Burns, and the ghost of Joe Burns, basically, opening the batting, which isn't great. And then who did they bring? So it was Warner and Wade for the 3rd test? No, it was Warner and Labuschagne for the 3rd test, which looked
Bukowski.
okay on paper, but then it turned out that Warner couldn't run. So, I mean, like, what are you expecting to happen there? And then the 4th test, it's Warner again, maybe slightly fitter, but not moving that well. And Marcus Harris, who never really
we proved is no good.
he's never really nailed down the position. So there's some big questions there. Cameron Green batting at 6. Never played a Test match before. That's a bold choice in your middle order. Matthew Wade also in the middle order. Not very good, really. I think is probably the
Travis Head was around.
Travis Head is who I think they should probably have persisted with. Averages over 40 in Test cricket. Probably in a similar way to Pant. The way he plays means he's going to get out looking ugly sometimes. Wafting his bat. I'm not saying he's as good as Pant, but I am saying that, like, back the guy who averages over 40 in Test cricket instead
Not
of
under
Matthew
30.
Wade.
I think what they did there was take him out the firing line, if I'm perfectly honest. I think it was one of those situations where they thought, do you know what? He's not going to do anything for the next 2 Test matches. Let's give him a break. Let's give him a proper go in South Africa.
I mean, an element of that. But then I think that speaks to the kind of Australian arrogance about how they thought they might win this series. I think they thought, we can rest one of our players of the future, bring him back in when it's against South Africa when he's had some time off or whatever. And Matthew Wade will just do the business because, we're playing at the Gabba and we're playing at the SCG and we're Australia. That's what we do. But it didn't work out like that. And I think not having your most talented players there is a problem. I also think you got to ask some questions about the bowling. Ross, you made a really good point about rotation. But Nathan Lyon as well. I mean,
Yeah, have we ruined him with our jingle? Is that what's happened?
I think it's a mentality thing. I think they've now, the ghost of Headingley, they now have also drawn the game and then lost this one. 4th day for Australia under Payne's captaincy is just a bit of a hoodoo. He seems to make the wrong decisions. He's not great with DRS.
Yeah.
There's just tactical blunders that I think they are in that thing. And
Not
I think
to mention
tactical
drops.
blunders and a colossal reliance on Smith and Labuschagne. Fair enough, if you're going to rely on 2 blokes, Smith and Labuschagne are up there, aren't
Not a
they?
bad choice.
yeah.
But you have to build some structure around them.
Yeah, but I just think the ruthlessness that you used to see under Ponting, after Ponting's Australia, War's Australia, just isn't there. The ruthlessness of going on, like even Labuschagne's took pelters in the Australian press this week for getting 108 and then giving his wicket away. And they were just like, he should be going on to make daddy centuries. What they need to also look at is the middle order. The middle order, I think, in the first innings of this match, they all got 40s. They all got starts. So Payne, Wade, whoever else is it, Green, they all got 40s and all got out. And that's not the way you win Test cricket.
No, yeah, well, especially in Australia. If you're in England, you can rack up 350 and you're in the game. Like, that's a good score. You can't be doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
in Australia,
the Australian side of that era you're talking about 10 years ago or whatever it was. I mean, they were intimidating, weren't they? Like you were in a battle mentally before you'd even hit the pitch, and I think this lot behave in the same way, but. It's like what you say with all fart and no poo. They behave in the same way, but they just don't have the same the same aura to back it up and skills to back
They're
it
not
up.
as good.
Yeah.
They're not as good.
And India stood up to them, and they were rattled.
Well, I've got one final point. Max, do you know what Rohit Sharma's bowling figures were from this game?
Yes, I do. They were 0.1 overs, no maidens, 0 for 1.
I thought he's on mine here. He went for 6 runs, mate.
No, that was the economy rate, wasn't it?
Oh my god!
That's
embarrassing, isn't it? I've got one more point to make as well, and I think this is a wider cricketing point. Back to India, I reckon. I don't know if you two will agree with me, but this will be remembered as a bit of a marker in the history of the game. For people who listen to this, probably are English and maybe Australian fans and are maybe more casual followers of the game. If you didn't know already, cricket has entered the age of India. And I think this series will probably demonstrate what that looks like in the future. And I mean that in terms of...
Are you talking age of West Indies, age of Australia, now India dominate?
Yeah, but I think with that off-field power as well, I think
it's nice having the money behind you, isn't it?
More and more Indian, and I think you'll see that in terms of them being able to field at least the best 11 in the world, and maybe the best second 11 as well. In terms of player depth, I think they'll be able to produce better players. I think blokes will come out of nowhere to be bowling really quickly. If you don't follow the IPL, they'll come out of nowhere to be bowling really well or batting really well. I think this will be looked back on as the point where we say this is when India went from threatening to be the on-field powerhouse to match the off-field powerhouse to being the all-round thing. I mean, if it hasn't happened already, to be quite honest, they've lost 4 tests at home in a decade, which is a pretty good base to start from. But I think they will start to dominate teams from overseas as well. I mean, you only have to look at the selection for this to see what we're dealing with. I think there were 3 players that started the first test that also started the last test, and that 11, I mean, as we've said, that's not, by any other team standards in the world, that's not a second 11 or a second 8. But you could argue that for India, and I think I don't know. What do you two reckon? Is this the dawn of the age of India?
Well, I think there's also another bit there, Jack, around what we've seen over the last probably 2 or 3 years in Test cricket in general, that when matches go to the 5th day, teams aren't just looking to see that out and bat out the day. They are trying to set themselves up for a win, and that's not what they did previously in kind of the 80s and 90s. I mean, you'd get rolled by Australia and West Indies, no doubt, but people are now going for that victory, and I just think that's a positive step, and I think that's probably the increase in people playing multi-format cricket and actually trying to build that confidence, especially look at England's confidence into that and what India are trying to do. I think it's going to make for some very interesting Test match cricket.
I think we're just going to get smashed. India's going to smash everyone, is what I reckon will happen.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll do a proper preview of that in a week or two, no doubt. But I do not hold up much hope for that. What I want to see is India New Zealand. That's the series I want to see. Right, that would be good. Those two, that would be really good.
And I think India in England will be interesting as well because the conditions will give England a chance.
Yes.
And I mean, England juice it as much as possible. Probably more than any other team in the world, to be honest, to give England the best possible chance at home.
Well, and you said actually earlier, Jack, you would be very interested in seeing Australia versus India at Lords.
I think that would be
interesting.
I think after this
seeing
series,
both of them alien to swinging conditions and what happens there, that could be hilarious.
We should just tip to the World Test Championship, which is how that would be facilitated.
Yes.
Someone worked this all out on Reddit, but I think at this point, the most likely final is India v Australia.
There aren't many games left, are there?
Yeah, Australia need to win in South Africa. That's not necessarily a given, but they probably will. And India need to not lose 3-0 at home to England.
Ooh, could be tough.
Final point, unless anyone else has got anything else.
I had one question, one small last question for you guys, which was where does this sit? As a series and test win, where would you put this in terms of performance? Like maybe in the context of away series performances in Test cricket?
I would say the test itself, I think this isn't my last point, but we'll get onto that because I think it rounds off quite nicely. I think the match itself is probably a top 10 that I can think of off the top of my head. Again, like this is with reference to me being 28 and not remembering the whole history of Test cricket.
The whole of cricket ever.
But it's in terms of the achievement, I think it's pretty high up there. To chase 329 on a fifth day pitch away from home against quote unquote the best pace attack in the world.
And a team that's unbeaten at said ground for
33 years.
33 years.
Yeah. In terms of series, it's in the ballpark of some good ones, isn't it? I don't think it's 2005. I don't think the tests were close enough. Even if the arc of the series was interesting, some of the tests were they brilliant? Like, were they actually fantastic? They had compelling
they
passages of
definitely
play.
improved. They reached a climax in the right. I think that's what's good about it. Is it's gone in the right direction. Like there was
crazy shit
drama
happened
in the first two, but like the real drama happened right at the end, and that's
look, it's a really interesting series. It's probably a top 5 series that I can think of. Ross, what do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I agree with your points there. I think it definitely eclipses Kohli's win a couple of years ago in Australia. Yeah. I think this was a more impressive win. Obviously, he'll take the captaincy back because he is Virat Kohli, and I think Rahane did a great job, and he'll be part of that team for a little while now, which is a positive thing. And you could always lean on him for his tactical nous that the commentators kept on going on about.
Last thing then, I don't know if you've seen the backstories of some of the new Indian players.
No.
They are quite interesting. So just to run through them quite quickly, to give you, I mean, like, to probably, I think the most dramatic thing about this is really the difference in where some of these players will have come from versus where a lot of the Australians will have come from, which is probably quite nice facilities in Sydney grade cricket or Melbourne grade cricket. And I'm not saying that like none of the Australians ever faced hardship when they were young, but to run through a few, Natarajan is the son of a loom worker who had to make big decisions about investing in shoes to play cricket when he was young. He has a son who was born during the IPL. He hasn't seen that son yet because he's been in bio bubbles. Siraj, I don't know if you've heard this. I think he's the only Muslim on the team, which is probably a reasonably challenging situation to be in, given contemporary Indian politics. We'll stay broadly out of that, I think. But
for the best.
If you want to read more, there's a Siddharth Monga article on Cricinfo about some of that. Anyway, he is the son of a rickshaw driver. His dad, who was the rickshaw driver, passed away whilst Siraj was in Australia. Obviously, he didn't get to go home to the funeral, and his dad never got to see him play Test cricket, which was his dream. Didn't bowl with a leather ball until he was 21 years old. Wow. Which is pretty insane. Navdeep Saini, he had to fund his own coaching as a kid by playing in exhibition matches with a tennis ball for 300 rupees a go, which translates to about £3. Vihari, his dad passed away when he was 11, was rich enough though to have a bowling machine in his garden. His mum fed him balls for 2.5 hours a day to get him good at cricket. Shubman Gill's family moved hundreds of miles to get to be closer to a cricket academy so he can make it. Washington Sundar is named after his dad's benefactor, so I mean that's a circumstance you couldn't envisage happening in England or Australia. And finally, Ross, I think you'll like this one. Shardul Thakur, he was obese when he was young. Apparently, Sachin Tendulkar is the person who advised him to lose some weight and said you could be a great player if you did. And there he is at the Gabba, smashing the ball all over the place and taking wickets. So
there's a 5-part series in there.
that gives you a little impression of where some of these Indian guys come from, and fair play, like a fantastic thing. Just final thing from Twitter, Steve Box with a really valuable contribution here. Steve, Tim Paine's shit. There we are. I think what a way to end the segment.
Motion carried.
We will be back after a short break with England v Sri Lanka.
We love hearing from our listeners, so please follow us at The Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Or if you have a great story, like Scotty G did, about the Hayden Way, Matthew Hayden's personal website, we want to hear about it. So from wherever you're from, send us in a great story and we'll read out on the show. Email us on thecricketpod@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so England versus Sri Lanka. So it was the first test, which finished on Monday, with England wrapping up a 7-wicket victory, which sounds relatively straightforward, but there was definitely some England traits of old sprinkled throughout, as well as bits of brilliance. England had a bit of an interesting plan of batting well at one part, bowling well at one part, batting shit for another part, bowling really shit for the other. And it was a bit of a Pakistani performance, is what I took away from it. However, England, as I said, came back with one fan shouting Jerusalem from the fort, and overall a great start to the winter. My first question out of the block for both of you guys: is Dom Bess the new Graham Swan, as he had a fifer straight off the plane?
Only if you're talking about his dancing.
Well, yeah. No.
No. What I really enjoyed was it's rare when it comes to like professional commentary, when you've got like Nasser Hussain on there, who really rip into kind of a lineup. And Sri Lanka, probably one of the worst batting performances you're going to see in a home game. And I
think it was the worst.
It was shocking. It was so bad.
Ross, you're right. Sometimes they don't often do it, but when they do it, like, they can be harsh. And sometimes, because you've got to play a role, there are people who are worse than others. Michael Vaughan, but they make statements. The pundits make statements which are like not really defensible. Some people will say this is the worst batting performance I've ever seen, and I honestly think that probably is true. They were so tragically incompetent.
I mean, the thing is, like, they got to 135 somehow. I think Hasaranga had a bit of a blast, didn't he? And made it look not as bad. But and you compare it to things like even let's say in England, when they were bowled out, what was it, for like 70? Was it by Ireland at Lords? At least they were bowling straight and vaguely at the stump, so that if you missed it, you were going to be out.
Tim Murtagh has taken 500 wickets at Lords. It's embarrassing, but it's not.
It's not like it's not entirely your fault. In this case, 9, 10 wickets out of them were just stupidity.
Well, was it 3 reverse sweep wickets in the first innings, or was that across the match?
I think it was 2 in the first match. So my second question was: would you advise aspiring Test match players to play the reverse sweep on day one, let alone when you're 3 wickets down and you've got about 15 runs on the board?
Not at 27 for 3. At 135 for 9, like maybe, because it's gone at that point.
Well, from what I could see, it looked like they'd never played the reverse sweep at all in their life, and then they automatically premeditated that was the percentage shot at that specific moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, what I particularly don't get about this, and let's go back to your original question, because Dom Bess's fifer needs a deep dive.
It was the single worst set of 5 wickets I've ever seen in my life, including all the club cricket I've ever played.
We know it was bad. Dom Bess knows it was bad. Everybody, Randy Caddick standing on the Gaul fort could see it was bad from 150 metres away. The Sri Lankans knew it was bad. But it's like... it was bad.
There's not much more to say about it, is there? Right. None of them were wicket-taking deliveries.
Yeah, but you have to. I don't know. You have to ask what Sri Lanka had done in preparation for this test, because you're facing a guy who is bowling a lot of average deliveries, and Ross, to answer your second question, having got the best question out of the way, he's not Graham Swan. He was pretty lucky. He didn't bowl that well. To answer your second question about the reverse sweep, when do you want to get the reverse sweep out, or do you want to get it out on day one? The answer is yes. If you're facing quite good bowling, and maybe you don't really know which way it's going to spin or how much it's going to spin, and the bounce is like not particularly threatening. You didn't need the criteria for getting the reverse sweep out was not there. You did the checklist you need to go through to approve reverse sweeping was not fulfilled. You could, as Max, as you say there, you could wait for the 2 short balls and over and just knock them for a couple of runs around the occasional boundary.
Try not to hit it to deep point.
Well, I mean, even if you did, it's just a free run. So I don't know. I mean, like, how much do we want to lay in to Sri Lanka here because it was fucking awful. They were abysmal.
Well, I think you've kind of said that in no uncertain terms. And I think anyone who followed any of that cricket will know how bad it was. The stat from CricViz, wasn't it? The 5 wickets that Dom Best took in the first innings actually had a wicket expectancy of 0.18. Was that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So you wouldn't expect Dom Best to have taken a wicket 20% of the time. In other words, like not a single wicket, and he walked away with 5. Anyway, what happened after that, Ross?
Well, there was. I think I want to put both innings together here for England because the openers. I think England. I'm not sure if they've got it right. 23 runs between Dom Sibley and Zach Crawley opening up. Where have we gone wrong there with the selection? Because there is a couple of different people to choose from.
Well, I know what you're leaning towards here, Ross.
Yeah, and I think you're wrong.
And that's fine. Let's
try to explain what you think because.
Yeah.
And then me and Max can talk about what we think.
Yeah, so I think if England are going to have the balls to pick Johnny Bairstow based upon his record in Asia, they need to pick someone who also has a good record opening up in Asia. That's why I think Keaton Jennings should have been on the plane and should have been opening up when they said Rory Burns wasn't going to turn up. That is my hypothesis. I think Burns isn't actually an amazing player of spin. He averages 28 against it. Sibley's average is worse than that. And I mean, did you see his leave in the second innings?
It's good, wasn't it? That's a good one. 2 types of leave.
Yeah, that was certainly a bad one. Zach Crawley showed his inexperience, but he's worth persisting with after his 267 against Pakistan. I don't see any point in Bracey being there. Whilst Keaton Jennings is sat home with his feet up, and he averages in Sri Lanka 46.6. He's got a high score of 146 there. He also has an average of over 40 in India, where he hit 112 facing off against Ashwin and Jadeja. He should be in the side, in my opinion.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I don't really see what Keaton Jennings builds you towards in terms of taking up a place in the side, in terms of what you do with him when you go back to England and you know he can't do the job, and in terms of wasting a place against a team that aren't very good. You don't get that many soft-ish fixtures in Sri Lanka. Now, we all predicted, I mean, we didn't acknowledge that we got 3 on the bounce wrong in the India-Australia series, but we did. We all predicted 2-0 England, and it looks like it probably will be 2-0 England, based on that first test. And I don't really see why you try something that you know doesn't really work in the long term in one of the games where you go really sort of expecting to win. I get the point. Sibley doesn't necessarily look up to it against spin. But I also think that we don't necessarily know that for sure. I think he needs to have a long, hard think about what some of his options are. And in a similar way to the Sri Lankans thinking, like going through the checklist for when you get the reverse sweep out, he needs to have a think about like, well, what do I defend? What do I play at? What are my scoring options? Which bowlers do I target, and so on. I think really with Sibley, it's probably an inexperienced thing. The same with Crawley. I mean, he's younger than Crawley, isn't he? Or the same age as Crawley. So I think there, it's probably as much an inexperienced thing as a lack of talent thing. I take your point. You know, like if England only played in Asia, maybe Dom. Is not his name, is it? Keaton Jennings. Maybe Keaton Jennings would be worth a punt, or maybe he'd be a more stable member of the team. But they don't. And I think the other problem that England have in terms, or any team has in terms of selecting people for certain conditions, is you don't really get enough of a sample size about people's ability in certain conditions from Test cricket. And it's not like Keaton Jennings has gone over and played in the Ranji Trophy and averaged 55 all season or something like that, is it? Or Dom Sibley can go and do that, because that's not really how international, how first class cricket works across the world. So you are, I think you're generally best off picking the players who you think will have the highest career average for every game, and accept that on occasion there are individual circumstances where that might not be right. but those players, because they will achieve a higher career average, are the ones most capable of learning, changing their game, improving themselves and improving your team as a whole. So don't get Keaton Jennings a plane ticket. Max, what do you think about Keaton Jennings?
I don't have a huge amount to add to that, Jack. That was pretty comprehensive, but I agree with you. Generally, I would sum up. I mean, there is an argument for horses for courses in certain situations, but you could argue that that's also a sort of type of short-termism. And I think if you're trying to build a team, really, aren't you? And you, as you say, you want your best players around, and they are young and they need the opportunity to be able to improve how they play against spin for games like they'll be playing in England in international cricket against top class spinners, and it won't spin as much, but it will get to a fourth, fifth day, and you'll be picking these players because they are the best players at home. And if they have that experience of having been to Sri Lanka where it spins a lot, or and you're playing against a lot of spin, you might start out being rubbish, but it might give you clues onto how you can work your game, experience of working on your game, and I think that kind of experience is absolutely key to be able to make them more all-rounded Test players, and I think it would generally benefit the side as a whole by keeping them in. And as you said, we know that Keaton Jennings will just dangle a bat outside off stump and get nicked off at slip every other ball. So
I think one of the other things is that Sri Lanka is probably the only place in the world where you could pick people because they're spin specialists. Like Bumrah's not played a Test at home in India, but I'm going to guess that
he'll probably still be quite good.
He'll be pretty good when he gets there. I'm going to guess that India will have a couple of other seamers as well. Probably half their overs will be bowled by seamers who are of an equal or better quality than the England seamers. I don't think Keaton Jennings is your answer to that problem. Whereas Dom Sibley has proven capable of doing it. Can we talk about England's batting more broadly?
Yeah,
and Joe Root, he was pretty good, wasn't he?
Well, that was going to be Max had team me up perfectly there around learning how to play spin. They should just look no further than how Joe Root batted. He was brilliant. He was back to old Joe Root. It was all kind of, you saw that the small movements in him. I think bringing up Nasser Hussain again, talked around what he was doing against Hazelwood and Cummings last when England played Australia. Now he's kind of back into the old Joe Root, and I mean, was it 200 and how many runs was it in the end?
228.
228. That is a daddy century. That is the match winning double century.
And if there's one thing that people have criticised Joe Root for lately, it's he didn't get a century last year and he doesn't convert 50s enough. So he stuck two fingers up there and said, "Look at that," which is great.
He did do that. Do you know what's special about 228, or do you know what's annoying about 228, boys?
Is it one off his high score or something?
No. Every score between 0 and 250 has been made except 229.
Oh,
so
that's phenomenal. What a great stat.
So that is incredibly annoying for the Zaltzmans of the world, I would imagine. Can I ask a broader question about? So, Joe Root's amazing. We talked a lot about. Well, we haven't talked much about Joe Root. Maybe someone can talk about it a bit more in a second. I've got a question. Was it a good batting performance from England, or was it an average batting performance from England?
So this was a bit interesting for me because I thought Bairstow actually looked fine. Bairstow coming back in, I thought he looked assured. It was clear that he'd played Test cricket before, and he was Johnny Bairstow. He was confident in what he was doing.
Apart from one session where he clearly had taken hallucinogenics at tea.
Licked a few toads at old Johnny Bairstow.
He just lost it, didn't he? For like a couple of overs, just went absolutely mental.
I think sometimes the Johnny Bairstow in him gets the better of him. I think the intensity goes too far, and it kind of goes off the scale, and it's a bit panicky, isn't it? When he ran Joe Root out, for example, or Joe Root ran himself out, whichever side you're on, it was clear.
There are two sides to that, are there?
Well, there's always two sides if there's two batsmen, Max.
Not when a man plays a forward defensive with men round the bat and then calls a man through.
Dan Lawrence, calm, collected, love his batting technique. Absolutely love his batting technique. And I don't. It was compared to Kevin Peterson on Sky. Might be a bit too soon to be suggesting that, but again, looked very assured.
Yeah. On balance.
Yeah. But where England's typically quite strong, I think, is from 7 to 11. Jack, you mentioned it when we did the preview with Bear from Guerrilla Cricket, saying that England are typically have been really strong over the last, decade, in that 7 to kind of 9 category. And even then, you're getting runs down the bottom of the order at 10 and 11. I don't think Stuart Broad is number 11. I think he proved that he'd found a bit of batting form last year. And I don't think he should be behind Leach and Mark Wood.
I think he didn't feel like it, basically. I think just Stuart Broad does what Stuart Broad wants to do. He did that mad interview at the beginning of last summer, then went on an absolute tear, and now he's king of the castle, isn't he? There's nobody that tells Stuart Broad what to... I bet you he talks about himself in third person. Maybe he's media trained enough to not do it in interviews, or even on like the stump mic, but I bet he talks about himself as Broady. Broady wants to bat 11 today. I bet he said that.
I bet you even further that he will do every reality TV show after his career finishes. He will be on The Jungle. He'll probably do X Factor, knowing him. He'll do everything he possibly could do to celebrate himself a little bit more.
I really like Dan Lawrence. Just wanted to pick up on that. I think of all the players, so I actually think. And I was looking at this. The average second innings score at Gaul is 425. Now, I think probably this pitch was a little bit harder than a 425 pitch, and I think England did really well, mainly off the back of Joe Root. But I don't think that all of the batters covered themselves in glory. I think Bairstow...
we know the openers didn't. We've spoken about that.
Yeah, the openers didn't. I think Bairstow gets credit, comes out with credit because he batted quite well in the second innings. Root obviously does, and Lawrence does. But England's vaunted tail was not necessarily fantastic. And I think of all the players who made me question my ideal England 11, Lawrence was the one who rocked the boat, so to speak, the most. And I think what struck me most about him was that he seemed to be having so much fun when he was playing. So he was. I think he was with Bairstow. Obviously, no, he was with Bairstow for the partnership that eventually won England the game. And the ball was spinning all over the place, and he was just laughing and joking about it. It was a real contrast of approaches from Bairstow. I don't think's ever smiled in his life. And Dan Lawrence was just like, "Oh, that was quite funny. That one that spat and like flew past the shoulder of the bat." And I think like. That approach, and Ross, as you said, his sort of technique, playing the ball really late, suggests that he's probably, he could become a bit of a banker in that England middle order.
Yeah, and it throws a cat amongst the pigeons, doesn't it? With Ollie Pope waiting in the wings.
I would drop him.
What,
I would drop Pope for Lawrence.
Yeah,
only one test, isn't it? We'll see how Lawrence goes in the next one. But
Bairstow.
Pope... I think Bairstow's gone already. I mean, like, do you want me to do my India team now?
Do it.
Might as well. Sibley, Burns, Crawley, Root, Lawrence, Butler. Fucking who cares about the bowlers?
Stokes.
But Stokes is in there, isn't he?
Fair enough. Jack, you mentioned the pitch. Which I think is quite because it was a bit shit, wasn't it? Really, the pitch was a bit rubbish. And is it a deliberate? I know when you go to Asia, the pitches are pretty dreadful anyway.
I don't think it was that bad.
But it wasn't great, was it? I wouldn't say
no,
it was...
right. So I because I did Guerrilla Cricket, I've watched a lot more of this test than you two. So I'm gonna pull more audio visual rank. Yeah, I'm gonna fucking have a go at you.
Tell us about the pitch.
It was pretty flat. Like there was, both teams had extended periods where the batters were massively on top. Matthews, Kusal Pereira,
Tiramani, his
Tiramani.
second Test century in 30 attempts or something.
Yeah, like a guy. So Tiramani, I don't know if you know. There's a pretty funny stat about him. Assuming a minimum of 20 matches, he is the worst top 4 batter in the world. And he scored a pretty easy 100. You have to say it wasn't one of those like battling master hundreds that you see. It wasn't Kusal Mendes in South Africa a couple of years ago, was it? It wasn't too challenging, and I know part of that's because England's spinners aren't amazing. But I think the pitch, apart from when the new ball was in play, was really quite easy to bat on. I reckon that a lot of England fans will be like, oh, wow, what a stunning win. Because they'll have watched that 1 hour where Sri Lanka had the new ball and they were bowling with spin right at the end of day 4, and they were getting it to leap around a little bit. And Crawley was batting like a cat on a hot tin roof. Sibley was leaving balls that were going straight into middle stump. And Joe Root was running himself out. And you have England fans, you got the fear, the panic. And now we're projecting that fear and panic onto the wicket, which was actually relatively benign. It was a reasonably classic Asian wicket in that you needed to rack up a score of 400 to win the test in the first innings, and that was sort of a minimum. It was quite easy to bat.
Not 135.
Well, yeah, I mean that's for day 1, 2, and 3. And in our preview show, we actually said that the only way that we could see England losing is if they were crap for all 4 innings. And if you look at England across the 4 innings, great result in the first innings. I don't know if they were amazing, but you have to say, if it's a results business, and 135 is a good result. With the batting second, they probably got slightly above average. They didn't get 600. They weren't like 3 centurions. They didn't declare. They did a bit better than they needed to do. Third innings, so Sri Lanka batting, they bowled okay. Like they didn't bowl any better than okay. They did probably average for that circumstance. And then fourth innings, they were then again okay, maybe slightly. They maybe panicked slightly, and I think basically, yes, Ross. To answer your original point, pitch was fine.
Cool. That's absolutely fine.
I don't know where I was going with that.
So you talk about England's performance in the third innings where they were bowling. So we talked about Best slightly at the start. Him and Leach was it really a Jekyll and Hyde performance, or was it just a gradual kind of easing back in? Leach hadn't played cricket in over a year. What was the feeling there around how they grew into the match?
For Leach, I think it's excuse me. For Leach, I think it's probably the latter, isn't it? I mean, he hasn't barely played cricket for a year or more, and then to be thrown in to a Test match in Sri Lanka where you have to bowl tons and tons of overs, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough, and he struggled to start with, and he struggled with his consistency. But you could see that he was starting to get back into it. So I think for Leach, it's just to keep an eye on him in the next test and see how he gets on, and see if he can use sort of the experience and the game time from the first test in the second test. As for Bess, I mean, we've not been convinced by him from the start, and I've not seen anything to change my mind. There were so many full tosses. Like, I'm giving Jack Leach a pass because of what I've just said, but for Dom Bess, he's been around the team. He was around the team last year, and I've not seen any change that's stopped him bowling a full toss every over or two, and it's not good enough.
I think that's a pretty good summation, Max. I think the thing that maybe concerned me a little bit about both the bowlers, I think, well, certainly about Bess, it took them quite a long time to get the pace of the wicket. So by the end of day 4, Leach was bowling the right pace in the right areas and looked like probably the best bowler in the game, to be honest, on both sides. Bess, I don't think ever really got it. So I think there are concerns there from Bess's point of view, because if you don't know how quickly to bowl or where to bowl, it's very hard to take wickets as a spinner or as any bowler, to be honest. And there are a few concerns about how long it took Leach to get to the stage where he was bowling in a nice rhythm. Granted, he's played 2 matches in 14 months, nearly died last year. Probably felt like he was under a lot of pressure, and I think he sort of said as much, didn't he, in an interview with the BBC, that it's been pretty tough being out of the side when I think he felt he deserved to be in it. So I imagine if I were him in that test, I'd be like, I need to get some wickets here, otherwise I'm going to be for the high jump. And fair play, he did, in the end.
Let's flip that onto Sri Lanka's spin bowlers. Jack, as you said, you watched quite a bit of the cricket as you did a bit of commentary on it. Embal Denia looks pretty decent. He looks much better than Hasaranga, who
certainly does.
The only mystery about Hasaranga is why he's in the Sri Lankan Test team.
I think basically because first-class cricket in Sri Lanka is so bad that they don't think he'll develop there. They want a leg spinner, and so they picked the one they found. And to get him good enough to play international cricket, they have to sort of bring him around,
throw him into the cauldron.
Yeah, and it's not great. It's not great, is it? He wasn't very good.
No.
He can bat
No.
a bit as well, which kind of helps.
That's
I
true.
suppose.
Yeah, a bit of a counter-attacking innings in the first innings, and didn't look well. Maybe
I think he was out reverse sweeping in the.
Well,
Got one of those in.
all good players do. But on Embledenia, I was really impressed with. I think he looks like he's got a really nice action, really smooth action to the crease, and obviously helped a little bit by the fact that he bowls left arm, orthodox, and he's playing England.
I would say that his figures are indicative of how unthreatening the pitch was for a lot of the match. He got, what did he get? 5 for 200, and we're saying he's their best bowler. I mean, it's not amazing, is it?
No,
across a match.
No.
Did you know? I haven't really got much more to say on him, but I have got one good thing. Embledenia means lemon land.
Well, there we go.
That is good.
Yeah.
That is what we bring you on the cricket podcast. Only a bit for me on the Sri Lankan bowling front was did they miss a trick and not an under bowl Fernando? I thought it was quite impressive actually from the bits I saw, and I think they missed a trick there in my opinion.
Possibly, yeah. I actually think England's tactical switches with bowling were better than Sri Lanka's. They didn't England didn't. Joe Root captained well. When the spinners weren't working, he used the pacers effectively to give Sri Lanka something else to think about and to dry up the runs. On the fourth day, it looked like Sri Lanka might get away from England because Leach and Best bowled really badly in the morning. And he switched it around after lunch, bowled himself a little bit to tie up one end, be a little bit of a threat, and then had Wood and Curran bowling from the other and mixing it up with Broad. Curran got a breakthrough, obviously with the new ball, which helps.
As we all know, Curran makes things happen. So
Curran bowled really well, it has to be said. But the Pacers tied down Sri Lanka and actually I kind of think forced the issue for Sri Lanka a little bit later on, because they realised they weren't scoring quick enough on a deteriorating wicket to get ahead of England.
Well, it's something
kind of a reasonable target.
Something you mentioned last week in the preview show, wasn't it? Was it that Stuart Broad said basically that he sees the bowlers' roles as inverted in Sri Lanka, and that's pretty much what we saw.
Yeah. And I think that
He bowled 14 maidens in the match. I think he had an economy rate of 0.89 in the final innings. Anyway, let's talk about the next test, shall we?
Can I do one last question for you two on that one? How did you rate that England win? So obviously the chase in the last innings looked nervy. I think it was a pretty easy England win. 7 wickets. I would say England with the dominant team probably got what they deserved. What do you reckon?
I think it's one of the best of all time, actually. I think when it comes to Test cricket, I think it probably eclipses the India-Australia. I think after not playing a lot of Test cricket, and England typically start slowly. Sri Lanka, as we said, are pretty rubbish, and I think if England didn't win by a comfortable margin, which is what they did at the end, I think it would have been a bit embarrassing for them. Max?
Yeah, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. I think we were okay,
that's
and
harsh.
we won comfortably. But you just, if Sri Lanka hadn't just imploded on the first day, it might have been a bit more of a squeaky bum time. But in the end, as it was, we saw it through, and Joe Root's batting was a highlight, and that was.
I mean, I think Joe Root notches it up to a 7 by himself.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe.
Speaking of squeaky bum time, Mickey Arthur's shorts. What are they all about?
Oh God! How do we get this far into the show without talking about Mickey Arthur shorts? Max, I presume you've seen this. This was early in the morning.
No, were they riding a bit high?
No, it's strong.
It's the camera angle.
Yeah, it's strong 1980s Graham Souness football shorts. That's what.
Lovely.
Any minute, it looks like a bit of brains about to pop out, and
He's got a wide stance as well.
Yeah,
it's not a very ladylike position.
It was
he's
a
standing in.
man spread and a half, wasn't it?
The camera is like shooting up 10 degrees into the danger area.
Yeah,
they cut to him. I don't know if you've ever seen Mickey Arthur, but he gets very animated whenever anything happens. Like there was the Root caught, not caught.
The Root's run out, he was in stitches.
Yes,
absolute hysterics with Grant Flower.
And as Ross said, it doesn't look like that small patch of nylon is enough to contain the beast within.
He's bowling in the danger zone. Anyway, when it comes to the next test, a couple of questions. Are we going to go to 3 spinners, or do you think we'll keep with the same structure?
We're both shaking our heads. Moeen's been ruled out by the team doctor, and I think he's the one who would have come in for Wood. So you never know. They might throw Amir Verdi in or something like that. But or is Parkinson in the squad? Maybe.
Yeah,
What does he look like?
I think.
I don't think he will.
Yeah, I don't think you can pick another spinner because I don't know if the spinners we've got left can bat well enough. Because if they're going to come in, they'd replace Best surely, and he offers something with the bat allegedly. Whereas Jack Leach, you're not going to replace him as a bowler, but that makes it a bit too weak.
So what are we saying? Stone for Wood and Anderson for Broad, and Curran keeps his
I was
place?
thinking about this. I would keep Wood in because I don't think I'm sort of thinking with my
injuries.
Well, but he barely bowls. Like he bowls like 4 or 5 overs a go, and I'm thinking with India on the horizon. I don't know. Well, I suppose maybe Ollie Stone will play one because there are 3 tests in short succession. But I don't see Ollie Stone playing that much, and I'm thinking maybe Mark Wood, should just be out there getting the game. And with the same logic, I would swap Broad and Anderson because they're both going to play in games in India, and you give Anderson a run out.
I would suck for Wood, wouldn't it? To be honest. I mean, he hasn't got the greatest bowling average in the world already. Be like, you're going to have to bowl 15 overs and field for 300.
Yeah, but he's
take no wickets and go for about 40.
Yeah, they're really trying to test his jovial personality, aren't they? You're still going to crack some jokes and do some stupid dancing now, Woody? Is that what you're going to do?
Are you still a horse? Are you sure you're still a horse?
Okay, so I think they're pretty much all the changes we can make. I don't think we've got the batsmen in the touring party to actually make any material differences.
Wokes and Curran's the only other question.
Yeah, I think they'll stick with Curran.
Wokes because of being in quarantine and things like that. Well,
there
we have it. So when it comes, and I think it'll be hopefully a more competitive match in the next game. But I'm still bagging England to win, and it's going to be a 2-0 win this series.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Sri Lanka showed that they do have the players to cause England a few problems on day 3 and 4. The problem with them, as it was in Sri Lanka, is that there's massive consistency problems. And there's probably a few ability problems as well. I don't think they've got great bowlers. Like Matthews is old. Kusal Mendes didn't get Olympic rings.
That was a highlight. I do think Angelo Matthews will continue batting. I think he'll retire against every other nation, but will continue to play for Sri Lanka versus England because he always scores runs against us. I don't know what it is. It is ridiculous. Anyway, have we got anything more to add, or should we wrap up the show?
No, Pakistan are building a new cricket stadium. There were rumours it was going to be a capacity of 150,000, but we've heard that it's actually going to be 40, so that's disappointing. And the BBL's on.
That'd be
yeah.
That's
we should do a little bit on the BBL at some point because there are a couple of good things that I think we should talk about there. But for this week, let's wrap it up here, boys.
What stage are we looking at with the BBL? Is it nearing the business end, or is it still rumbling on?
It's business
still
end.
The Farmers 11 versus the Farmers 11.
We're reaching business end. Anyway, India were fantastic. Congratulations, I think, to them for entertaining us, but also achieving something that we really did not think they were capable of achieving. You can follow the Cricket Podcast at the Cricket Pod. Get in touch with us. Loads of people tweet us about random things, and we always reply because we've got egos. We will be back next week with more Sri Lanka, England hijinks. Join us and tell your friends, and then after that we'll be back for England v India, and more of you will probably join us because that's the money maker from the point of view of this podcast. Goodbye.
All the £0 we've ever made. See you later.
Happy birthday, Ross.